Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We are broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on TikTok. Folks, please do send us your greetings, send in your messages, send us your comments, and send us your questions because we love hearing from you. This is our 120th Good Evening Britain show. And we've been doing this now for over 2 years. So it's great to be speaking with you. It's a fantastic platform. We say so many interesting things on this show. So please give us a thumbs up. Please give us a share because that's the way that we get the message out to people. And if you're watching on Twitter, now called X, please give us a repost and get this message going out there. We have a fantastic guest coming up at the bottom of the hour. It's the one and only Niall Fraser from the Niall Fraser Show. Niall is a very well-known Scottish politician looking to get into, hopefully, into Holyrood. And he'll be talking about the fortunes of Reform UK, which have been doing very well in Scotland recently. They stood in several by-elections, council by-elections in Scotland last week and got very, very respectable percentages. And they stood in 3 council seats in Glasgow, and they came third in every single one, knocking the Greens out the park, knocking the Tories out the park, knocking the Liberal Democrats out the park. Indeed, establishing themselves in such a way that were there to be council elections in Glasgow and throughout Scotland, Reform would be getting councillors elected on those kind of percentages. And also into Holyrood. And so we're going to be talking about that with Niall Fraser at the bottom of the hour. So please do stick around for that. Niall has always got a lot to say. And we'll also be talking about the other politics and the things that are happening here in Scotland and throughout the United Kingdom this week. And goodness me, there is a lot to talk about. And we're also going to have a competition at the bottom of the hour, which is for this amazing little badge. This is a badge which commemorates the Christmas truce, which was a short-lived truce on Christmas Day in World War I. And it says around it, it says, "Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright." The Christmas truce in the trenches in 1914. Very original badge, and it's hollow in parts as well. And that's yours if you answer the question correctly, which we will give you at the bottom of the hour, and we'll announce the winner at the top of the hour. And all you have to do is send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. And if you've never entered before, you do have a good chance of winning that cracking little commemorative badge. Okay, good. Now, we have had a busy week, a busy fortnight, because we've been working on volume 2 of a big book for the Union, which is going to be about the borders of the United Kingdom, about securing the borders of our United Kingdom, about protecting the borders of our United Kingdom. And it's going to be policy heavy, suggesting lots of things that can be done in order to protect our country. We're aiming to get it out for Christmas, but we'll certainly have it out shortly anyway. We made big advances on the book in the last fortnight when we had time to sit down and write it and research it. And it's going to be a unique book, volume 2 of a big book for the Union. Let's just say hello to some folk who have come in. Good to see you all tonight. Paul says, greetings and 2 thumbs up from Kent. 2 thumbs up, Paul. TC says, good evening, Alistair. Good evening, all fellow unionists everywhere. Anthony says, evening, everyone. Melissa says, that's totally amazing. It absolutely is. It absolutely is an amazing wee badge. Blue Bear says, hello, Kent from Glasgow. Hello to Paul from Glasgow. William says, just watch Labour bend backwards to the SNP. We're going to be talking about that, actually, William, because Kezia Dugdale wrote an article this week that appeared in the Courier, I think it was this week, where she suggested that the Labour and SNP in Scotland should form a pact in order to keep reform out. Yes, she actually said that. That's how much the establishment, such as it is here in Scotland, is worried about reform. World Fun says, when is the next rally? I 100% support the UK and a force for good. Well, the next rally hasn't been planned as yet, but we'll make sure you know about it. Derek says it's great to see Niall back, and not forgetting we had a great street stall a few weeks ago in the run-up to Remembrance Day. We did have a very good street stall. Debbie says she would say good evening, but for her, the house cat is missing and she'll have to watch the broadcast later. Well, I hope you find it. I hope you find it, Debbie. I'm sure you will. Cats have 9 lives, so let's hope that's going to be turning up very shortly. Catherine says, watching from Buxton. World Fun and Amazing does think that UK Force for Good is amazing. Well, thank you. Hello to Scotland Scorpion. Good. Well, as I say, we're going to have Niall at the bottom of the hour. Before we speak to Niall, though, I want to talk about 1 or 2 things that came up today in the news and that are also related to the research that we have been doing. And it is related to the extraordinary news that the Labour Party is going to be raising extra millions of pounds in order to pay for lawyers to take on legal aid cases for asylum seekers. Now, we've known that this is the case for a very long time, that asylum seekers and immigrants get legal aid in order to appeal their asylum cases, which is really quite ridiculous when you think about it. The taxpayers pay asylum seekers to have legal aid in order to enlist lawyers. And let me just bring up the story here, and I'll take you through the points. It is a story that appeared on the Times website on the 25th of November. And this is an immigrant organisation here talking about it because the actual article is behind a paywall. The Times, government to announce major increase in legal aid funding to clear asylum backlog. Because there are so many asylum seekers that have not been turned around immediately and sent back. and indeed have failed their initial claim, they're allowed to appeal. Now, the UN Convention on Refugees does not require an appeals process to be in place. The appeals process was something that was introduced by John Major's government back in 1993, completely unnecessary. The UN Convention of Refugees in the United Kingdom had survived from 1951 right up until 1993 without asylum seekers being given the right of appeal. But for some reason, no doubt there were vested interests behind that, they made it the law that if your asylum claim failed, you had a right to appeal. So what that meant is that all these people could just hang around in the country. And if you couldn't afford a lawyer, guess what? Gubbins here, the great British taxpayer, will pay your appeal. And so that's really when the appeal system really started to go through the floor and really started to build up a huge backlog of unnecessary cases. And what then also happens with a lot of these people is by the time their appeal comes around, they actually have been in the country for long enough that they've developed what's called a family life. So if they lose their appeal, they can appeal again against deportation on the basis of having a right to a family life under the ECHR. So the whole appeals process just really rubbished the asylum system and made it essentially unworkable. And we've always said that what has to happen is that we have to go back to the situation where appeals are forbidden, that they're no longer allowed. Anyway, we're in the ridiculous situation now that there's such a backlog of people waiting on appeals that the government's solution is to raise more funds from the taxpayer to give to the asylum seekers to pay the lawyers, to encourage the lawyers to take up more cases. Just imagine like the exact 180-degree opposite of what we would believe multiplied by 10, and that's what you'll get from the Starmer government. The Times reported in an exclusive article that the government is set to announce a major increase in legal aid funding this week to help clear a large backlog of asylum appeals. Millions in extra funding will be made available in an effort to increase the number of firms and lawyers willing to take on asylum cases. According to the Times, the serious shortage of legal representation has caused appeals to take an average of 46 weeks, leaving tens of thousands of asylum seekers in limbo. By September, nearly 63,000 cases were awaiting resolution in the first-tier tribunal chamber, more than double the figures from the previous year. Currently, there are sufficient lawyers to represent only around half of asylum claimants. These are the asylum appeals claimants, resulting in numerous cases being postponed or individuals opting to represent themselves. This often significantly extends the duration of hearings, with self-represented cases taking up to 6 times longer than those with legal representatives. Goodness me. Goodness me. According to the Times, the growing backlog of appeals has raised concerns within the Home Office and Downing Street, particularly in light of Labour's election commitment to phase out the use of hotels for housing asylum seekers. A Home Office source indicated that it could take up to a year before the total number of hotels in use begins to decline. Well, that's not actually good news. That's not actually good news, because where are they going to put them? They're just going to put them in your council houses that were intended for us. So it's best to keep them in these hotels or in these areas for as long as possible, rather than releasing them, as it were, into the so-called community. Anyway, that's what we're facing. More and more of our money being used to fund what we're calling in our new book the invasion migration sector, which is the legal establishment, that makes a lot of money from this appeals process. And the thing that we need to do is we need to simply abolish the appeals process for asylum cases. And that needs to be essentially the policy of any party that wants to shake up the system. And of course, the lawyers will scream, because this was suggested actually back in the days of Jack Straw. When he was the Home Secretary, this policy was suggested, and the lawyers screamed and they said, that's against Britain's proud history of common law, which is what they would do. That's what they'll say. They'll say that it's against Britain's legal history and our legal values and all that kind of stuff, without pointing out that asylum seekers from 1951 onwards never had the right of appeal in the UK until the Tories introduced it in 1993. So we need to simply abolish that, not give more money to lawyers to clear the appeals process. We simply need to abolish the right of appeal for asylum, saving millions, saving a lot of time, and ensuring that a lot of people get turned around and deported as quickly as possible, and before they've ever got the chance to set up a so-called family life and appeal on that kind of basis. We've got to just turn these people around as quickly as possible, because once they're in the country, it actually becomes harder and harder with each passing day to get rid of them. And on Friday, it is the general election in the Irish Republic. And that's going to be a very interesting time as well, because the Irish Republic is being swamped, as it were, with mass immigration. And the Republic of Ireland is very much like Scotland and very much like the United Kingdom, in the sense that we have a political establishment which is completely globalist, completely internationalist, completely behind all of these sorts of human rights laws, and which isn't actually nationalist in the sense of supporting the Irish nation or the British nation or the Scottish nation in any real sense. These are just like internationalists. And so we have to hope that the elections in the Irish Republic will somehow get some sort of people in who will be able to make these sorts of arguments that we're making here, even if it's just a handful of them. Because if the people in the Republic simply return the same old politicians into the Irish Parliament, then it's going to be a very serious situation for the people in the Republic. So it's going to be an interesting election, and a very critical one for the future of the Republic of Ireland as a recognisably Irish, in the sense of white European nation. And I just want to make a point there about race. And the reason I make it is because I saw a panel discussion with Irish Republic of Ireland politicians on Twitter this morning. And the complaint, quite rightly, was about the number of people coming into the Republic. And what the politician did, and I don't know his name, but he immediately diverted that question into obsessing about telling us that the Republic was not based upon race or ethnicity. In other words, what he did was he moved the discussion from one of numbers to one of race. In other words, he moved the discussion onto a topic that most people don't really want to talk about. And many people anyway, feel uncomfortable talking about. And he moved it onto that grounds because he knew that once he moved onto that and tried to make the immigration situation about race and ethnicity, then he knew he could essentially shut down debate, because not many people really want to argue on that level. Okay, and we see that here in Scotland as well. I mean, the big issue in Scotland is not race or ethnicity as such. It's the sheer numbers that are coming in. Last year, gross immigration into Scotland was greater than the town of Paisley. Okay, it was almost 83,000 people coming in, long-term immigrants into Scotland. That's the issue. That's what we should be talking about. The issue is, how do we stop those numbers, and how do we turn it around and send a lot of them back? That's the issue. And we can talk about that. All of us can talk about that, but the politicians don't want to talk about that. They want to move on to the topic of race and ethnicity, and thereby essentially shut the debate down, because nobody really wants to talk about that. So we should always be conscious of these politicians when we question them about immigration. If they come back to us with some kind of race-based argument for immigration, we can say, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the sheer numbers that are coming in. How do we stop the numbers coming in? How do we turn it back? But it's an effective way. This establishment, these globalists, these internationalists, have the ability to shut the debate down by changing the subject and starting to talk about race and seizing the moral high ground. Oh, we're all part of the Brotherhood of Man. We all bleed the same way. We all breathe oxygen. We're all part of one race, the human race. Oh, is that so? Yes. And that's why we should have 83,000 people coming into Scotland every year, because we're all human beings. Well, do you know what? I agree that there is a universality to the human existence. I agree that on one level, all humans are indeed brothers and sisters. My point is, I don't want them all living in Britain. So you can agree with the Brotherhood of Man approach, but you can still say, I don't want them all here, okay? And that's the grounds that we argue upon. And when we see people shifting it to the Brotherhood of Man argument, we know they're just trying to shut it down, essentially, to try to stop us complaining and trying to find practical solutions. They want to remove any practical solution and just have us talking about philosophical notions about the Brotherhood of Man. No, it's like, how do we stop the boats? How do we turn them back? How do we cut down immigration? How do we ensure that houses are for British citizens? All of these practical things, that's what we want to talk about. We're not really interested in your Brotherhood of Man arguments, which are just academic ivory tower kind of things. Okay. So hopefully on Friday, people in the Republic will be voting for the politicians who have practical solutions to stop the levels of mass immigration that are coming in to the Republic. And hopefully they'll see through the globalist politicians who don't want any practical solutions, who don't even believe that there should be any, because they've given up on those sorts of matters, and they just want to live in their own world, where they can all pretend that it's all going to work out at the end of the day. Well, it's not necessarily going to, is it? Deflection, that's what it's called, Catherine, deflection. Paul says, yes, the Brotherhood of Man won the Eurovision in 1976 with their song. Do, 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 do. I can hear it in my head, but I can't recall what it was called. Save all your kisses for me. That's the one. That was a good song. Crying out loud, it's 5 minutes to our man, Niall Fraser. Have I got anything really critical to say until then? Yes. Folks, this amazing little badge is going to the first person who sends the correct answer to our email, which is contact@aforceforgood.com. And the question is, after many long years of messing around, a certain ship, or rather a ferry, has finally been completed. Yes, the SNP misgovernment has finally managed to complete one of its long-awaited ferries. What is the name of the ferry that has been just completed after long years of messing around by the SNP? Send your answer. What's the name of that ferry? Send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. We will announce the winner at the top of the hour, and we'll send this little badge to the winner first thing tomorrow morning. Great. Let's bring in our man, Niall, who is a well-kent face on the AFFG programme, and indeed a well-kent face in Scottish politics. He rubs all the wrong people up the right way. Now, folks, if you're on TikTok, you will not see this. You'll need to go to youtube.com/UK A Force for Good, because we'll be speaking to Niall on our computer here, which you won't be able to see on TikTok. Al Kabir says, why is Scotland tilted so far to the left compared to the rest of the UK? It's a good question. It's a good question, sir. And it might have something to do with the fact that we've got two additional parties up here, the SNP and the Greens, that are very left, to use that language. We might ask our man Niall that answer as well. But folks, please give a big welcome. Please give a big welcome to Mr. Niall Fraser.
Hello, Alistair.
Hello there, Niall. Good to see you.
Oh, it's good to be on. It's a shame for the TikTok viewers they're only getting yourself. That's a bit of a shame, Alistair, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. And but so be it. Now, it's been a lot happening, it seems, in Scottish and British politics in the last week. And we want to get into talking about reforms, extremely good showing in the council by-elections in Scotland last week, and what that means for the future of Scotland and indeed the future of the United Kingdom going forward. But before we get into that, there's been other stuff on the horizon. And is there anything that's particularly got your goat that you want to lead on?
Well, I mean, I've sort of been ducking and diving, keeping my head low, as it were, in terms of political activism. But
that's not like you.
I know, it's just, it feels like there's not been much in the way of things happening. It feels like everything's happening at once, but then again, nothing's happening. It's sort of a weird paradigm. But what I'm feeling now is, I mean, what particularly annoyed me was Scottish government taking to the Supreme Court.
Oh yes, yes. Tell folks about that, because a lot of folk won't know about that.
Well, I mean, the Scottish government, in all their infinite wisdom, decided to amalgamate man and woman and make them one thing, which is impossible. God made us in man and woman, male and female, which is the same present across the entire natural kingdom, natural world. Which is just shocking to see the revelation that ScotGov's taken to the Supreme Court by For Women Scotland, sort of fronted by J.K. Rowling, and taking them to court to define exactly what a woman is, because apparently in Scotland nobody knows. It's just, it got my goat, because it's like we've not got more pressing issues. As the Supreme Court no got more pressing concerns than to be arguing what a man and a woman is, given the fact that we've known since day dot what a man and a woman is. That we only need the evidence of our own eyes and ears to understand what it is. And yet, here we are in the highest court in the land, arguing something that's so basic, that's so so simple, so trivial. It's
do you know why they're arguing it? Is it what's the case that it relates to?
Well, it's generally it's because this it must be to do with the Gender Recognition Act of 2004, and
Right.
then the gender reform that came rumbling after that. Let me just get it up. I mean, I'm hearing the arguments in court, and it's just ridiculous. Why a verdict on the Supreme Court's definition of a woman will take until next year. This is a 10 out. It's from the Scotsman. It's going to take them a year, Alistair. It's going to take them a year to find out what the verdict is, what a woman is. It's just ridiculous. And it's all what it is. It's all to sort of encourage people's delusion, or just to say, oh, you know what, just, you know, you can be who you want to be. And instead of telling people the harsh truths that they need to be told, even then, it's not even a harsh truth. It's like, if you are a trans person, it's surely in your mind, you know for a fact that you're one or the other. You're born one or the other, and there is no amount of drugs or surgery you can take that will change your sex. Just, it's impossible. It's simply impossible. And yet, here we are. So it's this to avoid telling them straight up, no, there is no way. When I think it all sort of circulates around the fact that there's these transgender surgeries, there's a lot of money involved in this, all the drugs they're taking. It's like they're sort of this push to amalgamate men and women, to amalgamate gender, even though it seems, well, maybe not amalgamating gender, because they're spreading gender out across this so-called spectrum. Whereas, you know, the classical gender is male and female, and anybody born, you know, prior to 1995 has all known that. And yet this education system now has just been feeding this base lie that you can be any gender, that when a person's born, the doctor is taking an educated guess as to what your sex is. And it's just, it takes us back to just such a ridiculous level. It's I said in the tweet that it's a sure sign of catastrophic societal decline when we can't even understand the basics. It takes me back to the by-election in Rutherglen, when on my STV gave me 20 seconds, Alistair, to make my case. What did I make it on? It's about defeating the lie that a person can change sex. It's because, by God, it's insane to think that if we're arguing over this issue, Alistair, something so simple, that anything that requires a minutiae of intelligence or sort of intellect, nothing will ever get solved. Nothing will ever get sort of progressed. It's always about, you know, defeating this, you know, taking what we know in our hearts to be true and twisting it upside down.
Yeah, and sometimes you wonder if that's actually the agenda for a lot of stuff. I think you used the phrase there, to foster delusion. And I think that there are people in the world who want to foster delusion and who just like to do that for the sake of devilment, really, at the end of the day, not for any grand scheme, just to see what people can believe. And people will believe an awful lot of stuff that is, on the face of it, absurd. And I'm not going to get into some of that. But I mean to say, my hope for the humanity going forward is that we are not so susceptible to crazy ideas, whether these are political propaganda or any kind of other sorts of propaganda that are put on people. But it is worrying because we saw this week as well an advertising campaign in the Tube, especially around Westminster Station, where all the MPs get on and get off for so-called assisted dying.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a vote on that in Westminster tomorrow. And I believe that's only, though, if it's passed, it'll just be to assist people in England and Wales. It doesn't apply to Scotland, but it's interesting the phrase they use, assisted dying. That's like, you drop a bomb on somebody, you drop a bomb on Nagasaki, and you say, yeah, we didn't actually kill you, we just assisted you to die. It's like, something from like a Terminator movie, I am not here to kill you, I am here to assist you to die. Yeah. I can imagine that would be a good line that somebody could write, actually. And
it's probably already been redone, you know what I mean, to make it sanitized for today's audience, Alistair. That's maybe what they've redubbed it.
Yes. There is one good thing, though, about those adverts is that white people have made a comeback in them, which is incredible. We're back. We're back. White people are back in adverts again. Let's see where we are here. If I can bring up one. Yes. Oh, wow. London has ads with white people again.
Oh, and it's for assisted dying.
That's for assisted dying. And this woman is so happy that she's jumping about in her silk pajamas. So it's a white woman that seems to be awfully happy about whatever it is that she's planning on doing, either to herself or to her granny. Then I came in with my little joke here on behalf of A Force for Good, where I pointed out that these actually are the first adverts in the UK not to feature a mixed race couple. Connor Tomlinson says here as well, Westminster Tube Station is covered in ads promoting assisted dying. Why aren't these posters as diverse as most other adverts? Well, Connor, white people only appear in adverts if it's to do with euthanasia, if it's to do with divorce, if it's to do with what else, cremations, if it's to do with funeral planning, if it's to do with signing up to the army to go and die for foreign countries. So that's where white people appear in adverts in the British advertising culture, if you didn't already know about that. So, but no, I think that is terrible. I mean, if you're a politician, what a privilege it is to be in Parliament. And that's the policy that you bring forward. I mean, that's the best policy you can think, I'm going to devote the next 5 years of my life to promoting that particular policy.
Well, you just know where it's going, Alistair. You know where it's going before the bill's even signed. You're going straight towards the stage where Canada's almost at, where, if you're a wee bit depressed, you can just sign yourself up to go and jump into a suicide booth, or a suicide pod. I think there's companies. This is again, it's very, very similar to the transgender ideology, where you've got this weird circle of anti-human money floating around, where they want to sterilize people with the transgender ideology, and then they want to just straight up murder you with this assisted dying, assisted suicide. It's very, very strange. And this is where you get these poster campaigns you just sort of showcase there. It's like this is where diversity, equity, and inclusion clashes against reality, where we've got too much white people again. We'll feature them in adverts that are promoting death. It's very, very sinister indeed.
Yes,
everyone knows again in their heart of hearts this diversity, equity, inclusion. It actually stokes racism. It actually festers it. It makes race relations worse, this inverse affirmative action. It's very, very sinister indeed. But everyone that's sort of promoting this knows exactly what they're doing. And yet the people on the bottom, they're just happy to take the money and put the posters up. Maybe, useless idiots or oblivious to the fact. We're seeing this sort of anti-human lobby really out in force.
Yes. Anti-human, I think, is a good way of describing that general tendency that is being promoted by various groups these days. Yeah. Well, talking about something a little bit more uplifting, there's going to be a Reform UK conference in Scotland, I believe, on Saturday. Now, before we speak about that, let's talk about the results that Reform UK got at the recent by-elections. Now, there were several by-elections. I know of 3 in Glasgow, and we can talk about them. But what were your thoughts on the results?
Well, I thought, again, they're great results because it shows that Reform are actually moving quite steadily in place. That they're gaining almost everywhere they go, beating the Greens out, huge. Look at the Conservative vote in there, Alistair. Look at it.
This is Maryhill, which was one of the places, and Reform came in at 3rd place with almost 13%. And look at the Tories, way down. I mean, just incredible. I mean, what other areas here? The Northeast constituency, Reform again in 3rd place, again thrashing the Tories with over 3 times their vote, thrashing the Greens. I mean, Reform gets 336, Green gets 77. And then in Drumchapel, again 3rd place with almost 13%, thrashing almost, certainly more, just under twice what the Greens got, thrashing the Tories, 3 times what the Tories got. Really incredible.
It's fantastic results. I mean, there's nothing else for it, Alistair, but they're fantastic results. It's a sort of, I want to say a new emerging party, but they're definitely, they've emerged at this point in time.
Absolutely. Without any elected people in Scotland, and you're coming in at 13, 14. I think one of those was 18% of the vote.
I think that there's overall, with Reform, there's a general excitement about Reform because it feels like they're the only party that are able to beat this political deadlock that we're in, this death spiral of Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory, when every other time our quality of life diminishes, our infrastructure crumbles, the inflation goes up, the price of everything rises, wars begin. This death spiral that Britain's in, this 2-party death spiral, it seems like the only party that can break that deadlock is Reform, and it's the only party that I've known in my lifetime that have come from 0 and then to winning 5 seats in a general election, first past the post system. It's unheard of. It's simply incredible that the fact that they've even managed to do that. Of course, there's excitement there, and I think they just need to roll the momentum into, in this case, in Scotland, 2026. And then it's obviously we're going to see Labour crumbling away. The longer Keir Starmer's in post, the less MPs he'll gain the next election, because Labour are just doing such a horrendous job already. People are already getting buyer's remorse. I feel almost sort of rotten for sort of suggesting to people that you should maybe tactically vote in the last general election, because if you had cast your vote for Labour and then they've taken your winter fuel payment off your grand, or your you know, your elderly friends or relatives, you feel partly responsible for that. And it's not a good feeling at all. But this again, the tactical voting only serves the two main parties at the same time, Alistair. You know, the Labour Tory death spiral that we need to break.
Absolutely.
And you'll
Absolutely.
see on the lead up to 2026, you'll see the Tories here in Scotland, the Scottish Conservatives. What will they do? What will they sing from the high tops, that they're going to do this for Scotland, they're going to do that, that we are going to make Scotland better, we're going to make your quality of life better? No, they won't. They'll point at reform and say, don't vote for them. This is because it's the biggest threat to the Conservatives is reform. So reform is going to come up and just absorb almost 90% of the Tory vote, which we're seeing pan out in all these elections. And you know, I think they've got some literature coming up about, you know, this sort of fear in Holyrood, this fear in the sort of public consciousness on the left anyway, of this reform group in Holyrood, this reform MSPs in Scotland. There's a huge fear. This you know, weird paradigm where they must stop it. Why? Well, they must stop people voting for who they want to.
Yes,
it's so strange.
What they recognise in reform, whether they're right to recognise it or not, certainly they see it as totally opposite to what they've been promoting all their years. The sorts of things that we were talking about earlier, largely opposite to a lot of that stuff. These globalists, they're internationalists. They want open borders. They see reform as standing up to that and being prepared to turn over the apple cart as well in trying to stand up to that. So it's like a kind of genuinely radical, at least that's how reform is appearing. I hope that the people behind reform are like that, but they certainly do appear to be genuinely radical. And so that position could have great success, and they sense that, and they're all sensing it. There was one of the Green candidates at an election here in Glasgow last week who did very badly, also writes a column for The National. And this person, Gummersall, says, I'm also under no illusions as to who the real winners on Thursday night were in Glasgow. It wasn't the Greens. And this is a Green candidate. This is one of the Green candidates speaking. Nor was it Labour, despite the 3 newly elected councillors. No, the real winners of these by-elections was Reform UK, who amassed huge support and soared into third place in all 3 wards. Despite having never contested a local election in the city before. These results put Nigel Farage's party in prime position to elect MSPs and councillors in Glasgow and across Scotland in the 2026 and 2027 elections.
Well, I mean, this is time to sing the praises of the actual candidates themselves. So in the Maryhill by-election, we had David McGowan of Reform UK, done a cracking job. And Stephen Morrison in Drumchapel in Anniesland. And Robert McGregor in North East Glasgow. So, I mean, these people have done fantastic work. And if you're watching at home, if you feel what we're talking about, we could, the destruction of Scotland, the sort of the ripping apart of all our traditions, the sort of diminishing of our quality of life year in, year out. Never been a better time to join Reform. Never been a better time to stand for a candidate for Reform. Never been a better time to start leafleting. Never been a better time to take back Scotland from these evildoers. And this is, the SNP and the Greens putting this out, this casting this spell of trans illusion across Scotland. That is evil. It is absolutely evil. And it takes me back to the Sandyford. I mean, the Sandyford gender service, Alistair. It's a gender disservice. It's the fact that that sign's on the building it's catastrophic. It should be condemned. It should be condemned. Honestly, the pain. How long have we been doing this, Alistair? It's been 4 years, and now we're at the Supreme Court to define what a woman is. It's honestly, we've got such better things to go on about. Again, they're talking in Holyrood today. They want to lower the speed limits on country roads to 60 to 50, as if Scotland isn't like ground to a shrieking halt every rush hour. Have you ever been on the Edinburgh bypass? Have you ever been on the M74, the M8 during rush hour? It's absolutely horrific. And all this time, all these motorists, all this time wasted on the roads. That's the government. That's the government stealing our time, stealing our energy. We should be reclaiming that back from the Scottish government. We need to claim that back. It's our time. You know what I mean? If I'm pretty radical, but if you can't go the speed limit across a road the entire duration of your journey, you should be able to claim someone back after the Scottish government. You should be able to claim someone back after Scottish government.
Well, there's a policy that could actually get you a lot of votes.
Mm-hmm. Well, another one, Alistair, just off the top of my head, I want to re-imburse. I want to re-imburse from ScotGov's purse any person that has been fined for parking a car, for entering a ULEZ zone. I want those fines reimbursed to the person immediately, and I want the ULEZ zones scrapped as a matter of course. It's ridiculous.
Well, these policies, I believe there's going to be a Reform Party conference. Let's talk about that. That's coming up on Saturday. Now, are you going to that?
Yes, me and the good lady are going, travelling up to Perth this time, which is quite a jaunt for us. But again, it's very important. And of course, it feels like anywhere we go, the protest follows, Alistair. But
that's good. That's good. It shows that you're doing the right thing.
But the Reform Conference is a great opportunity to speak to the higher ups. The chairman Zia is going to be there. Richard Tice is going to be there. The organiser for Scotland, Martin Green's going to be there. It's really going to be a celebration of reform, where they're at, the momentum, gathering the momentum up, and then casting it and rolling it further, rolling the snowball further down the hill, gathering more momentum, and then crashing it into Holyrood with a huge gaggle of MSPs come 2026. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point about 2026, because Kezia Dugdale, who used to be the leader of the Labour Party, she actually published an article here in the Courier it was Monday actually, so it was 2 days ago. Could centre-left parties work together to see off Farage and Reform in 2026? So her grand idea, and I waded through that article, one of the few people in Scotland is supposed to read it, is that basically what they have to do is what's interesting is she quotes a modelling that had been done by a political investigator who modelled the seats that could be won at Holyrood and gave Reform 14 seats. Now there's 129 seats at Holyrood, and so 14 of these would be very significant. But this modeler had also come up with the point that the SNP would in fact be the largest party, which is possible, at 47, and Labour at 33, Conservatives at 14, the same number as Reform, more than the Lib Dems and Green, which would have 10 each. Now, I'm aware that comes to 128, not 129, so I don't fully follow that. But what she was saying was there's no party there that's got enough to actually control the administration. So she suggests that the SNP and Labour should do a coalition in order to basically keep out Reform, the right, which is to say Reform. And I could see them doing that, quite frankly. I could see them doing that. And again, that would be another good reason not to go down the tactical voting route. Because if you're going to tactically vote for Labour and they end up doing a coalition with the SNP, then what's the blooming point, quite frankly?
I mean, I mean, the picture you brought up there. I mean, it's like a rogues gallery. This picture. It's actually shocking. I mean, you've got such a waste of space there in that picture. It's shocking, Alistair. I mean, I hear John Swinney talking, and every time I'm like, yes, he's talking, but there's nothing there. He's not saying anything. You know, people are suffering here. We've still got the highest drug deaths here in Europe. We've still got like an NHS is failing. Our roads are still crippled. I mean, what else? There's so much problems here in Scotland to solve, and yet none of them ever get done. And yet we're in the Supreme Court arguing about womenist. Come on. I mean, these people.
We need grown-up politics.
We need grown-up politics. And these. Anyone that sort of voted for the gender reform, anyone that voted for this legal fiction, in my mind, they need to be struck off. They need to be, you know, excommunicated from Parliament, from public life. I mean, these people, they know it in their heart of hearts what they're doing is wrong, and yet they've pushed it purely, I think, through financial means and financial sort of backing, especially like parties like the Lib Dems, who in England we knew took money from the manufacturers of these trans drugs. You know, I mean, this is why they push that, because the money's there.
Yes.
Really, it's there is no integrity left, Alistair. And I think reform has got the chance of a lifetime, not just in the immediate, and what I mean by that, not the immediate being 2026, it's got a chance of a lifetime to irrevocably change Scotland for the better, where you can actually get working class people into Parliament that is going to fight for the working class communities right across Scotland. And it's, you know, at the moment, we've got nothing like that. We've got nothing like that at all.
Yes,
I think it's a chance to sort of upset the whole apple cart. Sorry.
I think you're pushing at an open door here, because to go back to this article from this Green candidate who stood and who recognised that the main winners were reform, this person says that, I won't pretend that I wasn't dismayed at a fair few doors during my campaign, with people disenamoured by the Greens starting to see us as part of the same cosy managerial establishment as the SNP and Labour.
Oh, starting to see the truth. Starting to see through the smoke and the mirrors and the illusion. The sort of veil has been lifted.
Yes.
Alistair.
Yes, and person goes on, the rise of Reform UK conclusively shows that voters are desperate for an alternative to the status quo. Now, needless to say, this person says that that alternative should be radical policies from the Greens. But to be frank with you, the Greens are not the party to take forward any radical policies other than just kind of ridiculous policies like free this and free that for people. And in fact, one of the radical policies that this person suggests is free public transport, you know. So, but I'm sorry, nobody's really impressed by those sorts of piddling around the edges. We need root and branch reform. And I think you are the man. We've got to get you into Holyrood, Niall. But we're at the top of the hour. Let me just draw this to a conclusion. Folks, if you want to, please do follow Niall. He's on x.com/Niall Fraser 8. Now, that's, for those of you listening to the podcast, that's NIALLFRASER numeral 8. And you are also on youtube.com/@the Niall Fraser Show. So you've got a platform there, and we'll be happy to get you on the platform as well. And we're going to have you on next week as well, because you're going to tell us how the conference went, which will be good. And I know we'll want to hear all about that. So Niall, thanks very much for your thoughts tonight. Folks, please do say thanks to our man Niall.
Well, one, thanks for having me, Alistair. It's been a pleasure as always. And thanks to your viewers for listening to my ravings. But yes, it's very important that that people embrace reform. A lot of people saying reform's not going far enough. You know what I mean? But I think there's a big plurality in reform now, and I think it literally presents the only opportunity, the credible opportunity that Scotland's ever going to have to sort of to defeat the SNP, the Labour, for a long time.
Yes. Oh, it's all that we've got at the moment. I mean, at the moment, that's absolutely it. Okay, Niall, we'll say good night, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Cheers. Great stuff. Great stuff. That was the one and only Niall Fraser, a fantastic politician here in Scotland that just needs to get into elected office. So fingers crossed for Niall. Wow, what a breath of fresh air that would be if Niall could get into Holyrood. Here's hoping. Okay, folks. Now, do we have a winner? Let's check if we have a winner for the badge. And I'll just tell you about that in a moment. In the meantime, Christmas is coming up. There's nothing better for a stocking filler than our wee book for the Union, which you can get at our shop, forceforgood.uk/shop-1. It's only a £5, folks, and this is what keeps our operation on the road. Our merchandise keeps our operation on the road. I'm going to have to bend down for this as well. I thought they were higher up. Check out our greetings cards. Could also be used as a Christmas card. An interesting World War I poster. Is your home here? Defend it. Blank inside. And on the back there, we've got what's written down here. You get that at forceforgood.uk/shop-1 and go to amazon.co.uk, please, and search for volume 1 of A Big Book for the Union. One Big Country. Volume 2 will be coming out shortly, and Volume 2 is going to be looking at the borders and how best to protect our borders of our one big country. Good stuff. Now, do we have a winner? Let's see if we do. Yes, we do. Let me bring up that winner, and just bear with me, folks. We asked the question, name the ferry which has been finally completed after the SNP made such a mess of it. The answer was, of course, Glen Sannox, and the winner of this little badge is John Mackenzie. John, please send us on that email, send us your postal address, and we'll get that in the post for you pronto tomorrow. Good stuff. Okay, folks, we'll be back next week. It just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.